So, Joachim,
Yes.
the first quarter of 2020 is behind us, and I will start with the classic sports question. How does it feel?
It feels great, actually. It's been a quite tumultuous quarter. We have turned a lot of things upside down. I've stepped into my role, sort of as a CEO. That's definitely new for me. I'm here every day now. But market-wise, product-wise, there's so much that has happened. So it's a very, very interesting quarter. So it feels great.
As we all know, the world has been struck by the coronavirus during Q1 and also after Q1. Could you tell us a bit more how this has affected Crunchfish?
Yeah, well, Corona has affected everybody in the world, including us. We have a focus on India. I think that's the biggest lockdown in history. 1.4 billion people are not allowed to be outside. You know, they're confined to their homes, and that's huge. That's really huge. We just managed to do 2 trips to India just before that happened. But of course, that affects things because I think our companies there, what they have been forced to do is to focus on their employees. You know, all of a sudden, all the workplaces were closed. They had to find new ways of working. And at the same time, they had a lot of customers and they had to find ways to support them in this sort of crisis. So that's what they've been focused on. We've had dialogues with them, but the priority has changed to firefighting mode in those companies. That has happened with India, which is the biggest market. We felt Corona already at Mobile World Congress. I think that was the first sign. That was sort of early February already. That news came out. I remember that day when this big, enormous sort of exhibition. I think there's 130,000 have hotel rooms for a week in Barcelona, and all of a sudden they cancel it. Which I've been working in this space since the 90s. I remember when it was down in Cannes, then it moved to Barcelona at one place, and now they moved out to the big exhibition place. You know, this is such a huge exhibition that to cancel it was sort of what was a big thing. And that meant sort of for many companies no chance to expose the products for a while. That was something that happened with Corona. For us, work-wise, I came back from India and I felt that there was in sort of mid-March. That was more or less the same time as they closed down India, and I felt the whole situation was a bit unstable. So one decision I took was to recommend everybody to work from home. I actually lifted that recommendation just after a week. We just had it for a week. People are allowed to work from home, and a lot of people have done that during this time. But we only had a recommendation on for actually just a week. Then we. It was sort of almost safer to be at the office because there was very few people here. So then there was no reason for having a recommendation. So that's one thing. And then we see as well, I think, looking at, our first cash register is Tixter. They are in the event business. Obviously, that's affected. They do hockey games, they do big events. They suffer from the fact that there are no events at the moment. And obviously some of our pilots that we wanted to do, well, they get sort of postponed. So Corona for us, I think, has been a delay with things. But it hasn't in some sense affected us that much because as you know, some of our products that we came with new products in Q1, and we have anyway been busy developing and finalizing, say some of those products. So I don't think it has disturbed us as much. And the good thing with Corona for us is the fact that no one wanted to touch anything public anymore. You know, card terminals, cash, public screens. And being a company who thrive on touchless interaction, to thrive on contactless payment, that you want to use your own phone, this is a massive shift in the whole world.
Yep.
And we have technology that supports that. So long term, I think Corona will actually be positive for us. But short term, for these 3 months, I think there is a 3 months delay with market sort of marketing in the market. I won't market in the market, but working in the market, I think there is a 3 months delay. I think that you have to recognize that.
Yep. You mentioned India, obviously an enormous country, an enormous market. Could you tell us a bit more the logic about our focus on the Indian market, on the payment space in India?
Yeah. The logic is easy. It is the fastest growing mobile payment market in the world. And it's been that way for a long time. They did some really clever decisions from the regulatories that they put up an open platform that any app could participate in if they just conform to the UPI standard. And UPI has gone from, it was sort of launched late 2016. And in December, I have that number, 1.3 billion payments on UPI just now in December 1919. So in just 3 years, it's gone from nothing to far over a billion payments. And something that we didn't know when we were considering India was that the transaction fees would go to zero. Because it's also regulated. And I think it's an extremely smart move from the Indian government to say that, there's no risk in these. You just transfer money from one account to another. So why should there really be too much cost in that? So they've said, we don't allow any fees anymore from 1st of January 2020 for the merchants. The merchants should not pay for it. And that obviously also will mean an enormous uptake of this service. So there's a lot of drive right now in India. The government is all behind it to digitize the country. It's going to move from, I think it was something like 85% cash transactions to that they want to be sort of like Sweden are today. That they really want to digitize payments. And it's fantastic to be part of that opportunity. Why we started with was by chance. We found one fantastic representative that's proven really, really useful for us. He's been in the payment space for 25 years, very senior at American Express. And, we started working with him, and now we have 4 people there. The 2 last ones were ex-colleagues of him from American Express, very senior as well. And I think, we just added them a few weeks ago, and they are already up and running, and they love our proposition, and they are talking to their previous contacts. So India is really exciting right now for us, I think.
It is for sure. Another thing that you mentioned that we have been working very hard on during this first quarter and also afterwards is our products.
Yes.
And our offering.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about how we have been working with our products and how we have been developing?
Yeah, well, it's the reason why they came about was it was sort of prompted by India. There are 60 million merchants in India. We came with Blipit last year, and we realized quite early that it was only 2 million out of these 60 that was where Blipit was applicable, because they pay with cash mainly. There's no point in attaching an app terminal to a cash box really where you put in cash, because that signal won't go anywhere, because they're simply not connected anywhere. So we had to find another solution, and mid-January we launched, instead of having a link between the payer and the merchant via an app terminal, we launched something which is completely in software, a Bluetooth link. We're calling it right now a Bubble, and that addresses an opportunity with all these other 58 million, which is they want to digitize in India. The other thing we realized in India was that they have spotty internet. So connections goes down, up and down, and it's some areas they don't even have connection. So we understood that our products could be used for what we call this, like an offline transaction. And that is a huge innovation that we launched in, I think that was end of January. I think we launched it on Thursday or Friday, and then we went to India immediately. Mm-hmm. And we felt we had to launch it because we had to tell the market that we had it, so we can talk about it freely in India.
Yeah.
And that innovation is putting a key assumptions for digital payments on its head. Before, or well, I should say, currently, every single digital payment goes online to check on a bank account somewhere. Do you have enough balance to support that transaction you're trying to do? That's true for card transactions. That's true for real-time payments like Swish. That's true for wallet payments that you do if you are at a merchant like ICA in Sweden. It's always that way. But we've sort of taken away that assumption. What if we don't have to check for a balance, somewhere in the cloud? What if we can check it locally? And that is a huge shift, because it opens up that there's so much less signaling, and we make ourselves completely independent for everything that could go wrong. There is no coverage, there is no power, there is no internet. Bank ID goes down, which it did last week. Swish goes down. Whatever goes down, we can still make the payments. So what we're creating, I think, is an offer for a robust payment experience. It will always work. And I think that will be a huge innovation that will propel us into the future, I think, because that's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and it also has another interesting implication, because we have been talking to Riksbanken, for instance, about the e-krona project.
Yes, that's
which
right.
Of course is sort of somewhat connected to our offline solution.
Yeah, it was nice. Sweden's Riksbank is the oldest in the world.
Yeah,
I think it's from 1668 or 63.
Something like
68,
that.
68, yeah. But one of the oldest, and it was quite, where we visited them. This was not their original office, but they had a lot of history on all the walls. It was nice to be around there. But they sort of got, it caught their attention that we were talking about that if you're going to replace cash in a society for digital cash, e-krona, then you need we realize that we think they need a solution that represent what cash is. And I think it's sort of two things. One is that you can pay being anonymous. If I get 100 krona from you, I just have that, and I have an IOU with Riksbanken. They guarantee that money. But the beauty that it's sort of an anonymous payment. Some countries in Europe, like Germany, they don't like mobile payments because that creates a digital trail. So it's 70% of payments are still cash for that very reason. So it's kind of interesting if you can solve the anonymous thing. And you can if you make that transaction locally, because then that doesn't have to then appear on you don't create a digital trail. We can facilitate that. The other thing is obviously that what happens if the society in some way goes down? All of a sudden no one can pay anymore. That is a huge risk for a society if you have abandoned cash, like what's happening now in Sweden. So it doesn't have to just be that, because we have a reasonably good IT infrastructure in Sweden, but we become vulnerable as a society if that means of payment, which doesn't depend on online, goes away. And so I think we met them, and we're going to have follow-up meetings with them, which is or rather they have directed us to Accenture, which is the ones who are running their pilot right now. And we've met Accenture, and we're going to meet them again. And it's a good conversation we're having with them.
Yeah. Another important thing that we have been doing is we have been working with our company structure. We have formed a new subsidiary. Could you tell us a bit more about this company structure and also the logic behind it? Yeah.
Well, we have two technologies. We've had that for a long time. A little company like Crunchfish is sort of supporting sort of two developments simultaneously. And I believe it's good for us to be transparent about each side of that business, because they're both sort of they're cost in both sides. The proximity business that we're in, last year we didn't actually, it wasn't a break-even business, but we just lost a little bit, whereas all the loss is actually sitting on the gesture side. That's how we had it last year. And we did a pro forma. We showed that in our investment memorandum for the full year. But from now on, what I would like to do is to show sort of the performance of each sort of business unit very clearly. And that is what we have added a new page in this quarterly report that shows that. So it is to get visibility on how what happens. Gesture side will improve substantially, and the reason is it's not that we are going to have huge revenue this year, because I think it's still a little bit into the future, but we're going to move commercial resources. Last year it was just me on part-time. That was it, commercially supporting sort of Blipit. Well, I had VJ in India as well as a consultant as well. But what has happened this year is that we are moving basically the whole management team of Crunchfish to focus on the fintech opportunity or the mobile payment opportunity, and we've added resources in India, and now that will be a heavier burden on the mobile payment side or the proximity side of the company. The gesture will actually get a relief that we are not sort of pursuing sales so heavily, and I think it's a wise move, because the volume in the market is simply not there yet. So why overspend on sales in that side? So we will get visibility, I think, to the market by having this sort of structure. And I think it's the right thing to do. We already put proximity as a subsidiary in place. That was back in, I think, 2018 in January. And now we're sort of doing the same thing also on the gesture side. We're moving down all the development resources there. We're moving down our sort of patents we have in that area. We're moving the software, all the software, and all the key agreements. So right now, Crunchfish is structured in that actually the operational parts are we're keeping the development people in two subsidiaries, and then the in Crunchfish is all the commercial resources supporting the sale of these two sort of entities. But I think we have a good structure right now, which will provide the stock market a lot of visibility on performance and what's going on.
And of course, we have to mention the 20th of May this year, Crunchfish turns 10 years old.
Yes.
So how will we celebrate that?
The 20th will be a long day. We will... at the evening will be a celebration party. We will recognize the 10 years. We will actually go to where we go for lunch often at Bull Bar here in Malmö. We will have sort of we have some food there in the evening, and we will have a bull tournament there. That's what we will do. But before then, in the afternoon, we will have actually the board of Crunchfish is here, the board of Blipit is here, and we will have all the commercial resources of Crunchfish all working together in a workshop to stake out sort of where we're going in the future. That would be exciting. And in the morning, we have a general meeting, the annual meeting for Crunchfish. And we will also release the Q1 report. That will come in the morning. So we will do, for the first time, in collaboration with Västra Hamnen, we will actually have, we will distribute this movie with them as well. And there will be a Q&A as well, and that will happen in the morning. So that day will just fly away. I think it will be a very interesting day. But then that's sort of the start of the celebration, I think, because I think 2020 is a special year for us. We turned 10, and I think we have been discussing, unless something really, really big turns up, that let's sort of dedicate a little bit to the next quarterly report on, a little bit history, look back in history and look to the future. I've asked our founder and the CTO if he can, maybe he can do the VD-ord, sort of the CEO report. Maybe he can do that instead of me, just to show us what it's all about, really. Yeah.
And finally, I also have to ask, how does it feel sitting on the opposite side of the room from where you normally sit?
Yeah, that's we've done so many interviews, and I think that's also a treasure. The Q1 report, which just comes out at the same time, the front page is actually, there are 18 interviews there. There are links to all these interviews, and it feels good. I think you did a great job being Skavlan this time. And
thank you.
it's good. I think this format works for us to spread the word this way. And looking back for 10 years on those interviews, there's so much information. If people are interested in Crunchfish, how did the name come about? What happened in the beginning? And you can find so much material in those in those interviews, and also looking forward. I think a lot of people have forward projections of what they think, and we're all very excited right now. I think that's the feeling, sort of this year or these coming years, I would say, will be Crunchfish years. So it's going to be quite interesting.
Yeah, and hopefully we will have more interviews coming up, because we have only interviewed the management and the board and a few external people so far.
Only half of the board.
Only half of the board, exactly.
Some of them are remote. So I'm hoping if I can squeeze in some time, maybe the day before, or I know some will stay for the 21st. So I'm hoping to do these board interviews as well. But there are more. I have some other ideas of people to interview. So we will continue, publishing some of those interviews.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. And let's look forward to the rest of 2020.
Yes, we very much do that. So
Thank you. Thank you.